Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a wildly fascinating project that dropped in June 2026 by Dr. Avinash Kumar Gupta called Vibe Rounds. So, we've all been hearing about vibe coding recently, right? The whole idea that instead of grinding out Python or C++, you literally just type "build me a calculator app" in plain English, and the AI builds the entire thing for you. Well, Dr. Gupta asked a brilliant question. What does that massive paradigm shift actually look like when you point it directly at clinical medical training? Today, we're taking a full architecture to application tour to see how VibeRounds brings this concept to life, focusing heavily on its amazing suite of browser-based tools. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, to really get VibeRounds, we have to flip our expectations of AI completely upside down. The answer to AI in medicine isn't just some friendly bot that happily hands you diagnoses on a silver platter. Actually, this whole project is built on the exact opposite constraint. It's actively designed to be the most relentless attending you ever rounded with. It acts as a Socratic cognitive partner. It questions you. It aggressively withholds the answer. Basically, it forces you to think rather than just thinking for you. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First up, the anti-answer AI. Next, building with CCOs. Then we hit those browser-based tools, Casebench, Case Simulator, and Clinical Polymos. And finally, we'll wrap up with the honest caveats. Let's start with part 1, the anti-answer AI, Socratic stress testing. To really grasp this, we need to talk about how this is actually designed to teach. This system deliberately places itself at pedagogical stage 3, which is Socratic stress testing, and stage 4, guided discovery. It's absolutely not trying to replace your foundational lectures, and it's certainly not a research assistant meant to do your homework. It sits right in the middle, where structured struggle actually builds your reasoning skills. The magic is in how these hard constraints are baked into the AI's prompts. It demands a forced commitment first. You get 0 hints until you actually put a stake in the ground. And hey, if you try to skirt by with a lazy "I don't know," you hit a minimum effort threshold. You get redirected, not rewarded. When you do get hints, they're tiered, gradually narrowing things down. Say you ask, "What's the diagnosis?" The AI's first hint might just point out an abnormal lab value. Still stuck? The second hint might nudge you toward the patient's respiratory history. It's all about effort-weighted teaching. The more thought you put into your prompt, the deeper the teaching you get back. It is grading your underlying reasoning and your willingness to flag uncertainty, not just whether you happen to blindly guess the correct diagnosis. Moving right along to part 2, building with CCILS, the Clinical Cognition Operating System. 57. That is the number of self-contained reasoning modules in this thing. You see, that single persona Socratic layer we just talked about, that's really just the front door. Behind it sits a massive modular engine. CCOS packs in those 57 modules, plus 4 distinct pedagogical frameworks, and over 200 pipelines chaining everything together. It's all beautifully organized across 6 cognitive layers. These layers start at raw clinical reasoning at the base and go all the way up to an epistemic trust layer. Think of that trust layer as the AI's built-in self-doubt mechanism. It forces the AI to actively double-check its own certainty before it even thinks about presenting information to you. It is a wildly comprehensive operating system for clinical thought. Which brings us to the CCOS Builder, available right on the project site. It's just wonderfully intuitive. You literally paste in a clinical case, tick off the reasoning modules you want to activate, and boom, it generates a ready-to-copy prompt you can drop into any major LLM. The brilliance here is that sequence matters, entirely by design. It's like snapping together a clinical workflow out of Lego blocks. If you place a cultural competency module before a differential diagnosis module, the AI will actively prioritize demographic risk factors when it questions you. If you run a safety and bias module after a reasoning module instead of before it, the teaching path looks totally different. You are quite literally architecting the AI's thought process, step by step. All right, part 3, Casebench, your workbench, or the Bring Your Own API Key apps. Let's explore the actual client-side applications you can use right now. A huge focus of Vibrance is this suite of browser-based standalone apps. Because you bring your own API key, none of your data gets routed through some mystery third-party server. It's secure and local to your machine. Casebench is basically your general-purpose reasoning workbench. You can paste in a vignette, a discharge summary, maybe your own clerking notes. From there, you can dive into a live back-and-forth dialogue or jump into quiz modes tailored for massive exams like the USMLE, NEAT-PG, MRCP, or CLAB. Or, my personal favorite, you can run a single-pass analytics mode. Instead of a chat, it just gives you this massive top-down teardown of the case's cognitive pitfalls in one fell swoop.
You can even construct a full stage-by-stage pipeline where every single step builds on the last one. It's an unbelievably robust tool for tearing complex cases apart.
But, sometimes you just don't need all that heavy-duty firepower. While the full Casebench gives you that deep, multi-pass reasoning, Dr. Gupta also built Casebench Lite. It trims the whole engine down for a much faster, lower-friction session. It's absolutely perfect for when you just want a quick, straightforward Socratic check on a simpler case without having to boot up the massive pipeline.
Let's move to Part 4, Case Simulator, Virtual Clinic, Immersive Patient Encounters. Now, this tool takes that core Socratic model and basically gamifies it into an incredibly interactive UI. You start off by picking your specialty, your difficulty, and your setting, maybe the ED, a general ward, outpatient, or the ICU. Then, the system generates a simulated LLM-driven patient encounter that you work through using a live console. It is so immersive. You've got a live labs dashboard, a SOAP note view, a dynamically ranked differential that actually shifts around based on your inputs, and these unfolding clinical pearls. Those pearls pop up as the case progresses in real time, catching you in the exact moment you make a clinical decision to give you immediate feedback. It honestly feels like you're working a high-stakes shift, but with a master clinician hovering over your shoulder.
Which brings us to Part 5, Clinical Polemos System Debates, the Healthcare Debate Bench.
I find this one super fascinating because it completely shifts the focus away from the individual patient and scales it all the way up to hospital-wide policy. Imagine taking a complex hospital dilemma and dropping it in front of a panel of arguing AIs. Clinical Polemos sets up these stakeholder personas: physicians, nurses, administrators, patient advocates. And here is the kicker. Each persona argues strictly from their own specific seat in the system, and they never soften their stance to play nice with the others. Imagine a debate over allocating a scarce ICU bed. The physician AI is fighting purely for physiological need. The administrator AI is obsessed with resource efficiency, and the patient advocate is fighting for equity. You just sit back and watch this complex web of competing priorities unfold. It's a pure reasoning exercise that exposes you to the messy, incredibly complex realities of real-world healthcare administration. Finally, Part 6, the honest caveats, transparency in healthcare AI.
In a tech world where AI products constantly overpromise and underdeliver, Vibrowns takes a wildly refreshing approach. The transparency here is front and center. They map out exactly what is a deployable reality versus what is just a futuristic vision. For AI-augmented clinical education, they claim high maturity, with live deployment and a solid 6-level framework. Guided discovery research, media maturity, waiting on more validation. But look at bedside clinical decision support. They explicitly label it as early stage, concept and architecture only. They are flat out telling you that EMR integration and live bedside use are strictly pre-implementation right now.
And that leads directly to the massive warnings stamped all over the project. Even though Vibrowns is freely licensed under Creative Commons BY 4.0, they insist it is to be used on personal responsibility and solely for learning. Absolutely not for clinical purposes. The outputs are drafts. You verify them against primary literature. You don't cite them as fact. The project doesn't want your blind trust, It demands your critical thinking.
So I want to leave you with this final thought today. If a system like Vibrowns can perfectly simulate the relentless Socratic questioning of a master clinician, what exactly is the future role of the human teacher in medical education? It's a pretty profound question to chew on. I highly recommend checking out the Vibrowns prompt architecture and the companion preprints so you can explore this suite of tools for yourself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.